Hello, everyone. My name is Kimberly Gale. I am the Columbus Regional Director for the Minority Business Assistance Center for Central Ohio. So welcome. Today's topic is going to be talking about how COVID-19 have really shifted some of our MBEs and what they have done to pivot in this situation. Some of our minority business owners have basically kind of shifted and leveled up during this time frame. And so we have three wonderful business owners here today that's going to have a conversation about how they were able to make those changes during this time. And so we have on here today, our first guest is Kimberly Gibson. She is the CMO for IC3D Printers. Kimberly, can you just briefly explain what you do for your business?
Yes, so as the CMO, which stands for Chief Mischief Officer at IC3D, I do business development, I do sales and marketing, as well as my background is in product development and defense-related manufacturing R&D. Okay. I do a lot of government interface.
Oh, thank you. Welcome, welcome. Our next guest is Stephanie Cotto. She is the founder of Black Girl Group. Stephanie, welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about your business and what you do?
Thank you. Yes, so I am the CEO of Black Girl Group, and we are a full-service freelance staffing agency that connects African-American women freelance creatives to companies seeking to outsource more diverse talent in the creative industries.
Okay, welcome. And did I hear you from North Carolina area?
Yes, I'm from North Carolina. Yes, so I'm awesome. Ohio in here.
All right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I can say it's like 80, 90 degrees here, so we're feeling a little heat like you feel every day. Yes. And then our next guest is Richard Perry. Richard Perry is the president and CEO of Pinckney Perry Insurance Agency. So welcome, Richard. Can you give us a brief view of what your business is about and what you do?
Yes, thank you, Kimberly. Pinckney Perry is the largest and oldest minority-owned insurance brokerage firm in the state of Ohio, founded in 1961. We specialize in commercial insurance, property casualty, and employee benefits for businesses. And we have been active members of the OMSDC and NMSDC for a number of years and have worked with many of the members on their commercial insurance needs.
All right. Well, thank you and welcome, welcome, welcome. So before we get started about what's happening, this whole pandemic thing, I want to ask the question, if you all can give me just how were things before COVID-19? What was going on in your business prior to the pandemic?
So prior to the pandemic, I was really excited about 2020. I was one of those people who said, 2020 was going to be my year. I was so excited because I had so many amazing things lined up. And I had made this great and grand plan, like this was going to be the year that my business was going to grow. And so for Black Girl Group, about 65% of our contracts this year were all event related. And so whenever the pandemic hit, there was no more events. And so it was really heartbreaking because it's like, oh my gosh, like, what are we going to do now? Additionally, we do staff very heavily in the advertising and marketing industries. And of course, since everything had then become focused on COVID-19, a lot of those contracts got canceled too. So the year started off really exciting because we had so many great opportunities lined up to be able to place these women in amazing opportunities that maybe they would have never otherwise experienced. And then whenever the pandemic hit, it's like, okay, just kidding. None of that is happening this year. So it was definitely an eye-opening experience for sure.
Mm-hmm. So that 2020 was supposed to be the we had it all lined up, the vision year, and everybody had their New Year's resolutions about this was going to be the big one. And so I feel you, Stephanie, on that one. But boy, were we surprised.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to just leverage off of what Stephanie said. It was a similar story here. We are launching a brand new 3D printer. It's a large industrial printer. It's pro level. We had a point going to all these trade shows across the country, going to roll this thing out, blah, blah, blah. And no, none of that's happening. And so we've had to, like you, try to refigure this out. And how do we, we're in manufacturing, which is a good thing, which I'm sure we'll get into that later. But every plan we had has been completely revised. Having said that, we did have one of the best months ever in one aspect of our business in March. Until then, now everything's kind of dried up. But it's going to be interesting to see how long it takes everything to come back.
For sure, for sure. And you, Richard, what was going on in your world before this all happened?
Well, in my world, we were gearing up, similar to Stephanie, for a heavy new business and sales development in terms of new client acquisition, sales and marketing. And when the virus hit, because we service commercial business, we had to kind of shift to a service model because we saw that people and our clients were trying to file claims under their business interruption insurance, event cancellation insurance, all these things that people bought to kind of assure them that if something bad happened, it'd be covered. That has not been the case in many instances. And so we've been answering a lot of questions and trying to appease a lot of angry insureds, while at the same time, we still have new business development goals that really don't die, but they're definitely delayed.
I want to say something about this, Richard. You would not be surprised to know that probably the first call was to my mother and the second call was to my insurance guy. when it became clear that this was hitting, I'm like, oh, I got to get on this. I got to see if we're covered.
Right.
You are very important, Richard.
Very important.
How did that call go with your insurance guy?
Well, he was lots of caveats in the conversation.
There's a lot of caveats, yeah.
Yeah, and we it's so interesting because we consult entrepreneurs and business owners all the time, and I had started doing interviews with executive series about those who kind of been through the recession prior to this before, and then here we are 10 years later and something tragically happened again. And I never forget Keith Stevens, who's with PSI, and he said vividly, he said, the first time this happened to me, I was in fetal position for like 30 days. So he basically said, I did not want to come out my house. I didn't want to come out my room. I just was in fetal position, like, what am I going to do, right? He said, this time it came around, I was better prepared because I understood what I needed to do back then, which was almost closing his business and actually going out of business or filing bankruptcy, to having my paperwork together, being prepared for the PPP and the EIDL loan, and getting my stuff together without any reservations and moving forward. So I'm going to ask you guys the question is that what took you, how did you make the transition? So here's the pandemic. How did you get beyond the tragic area like everyone else? I'm sure we all were in shock. We're stuck in our house for a few weeks. We're not quite sure of, what's going to happen next. What was going through your mind in terms of how you were going to shift not only your mindset as to, okay, I got to figure out something fast, but more importantly, how did you kind of get past the thinking process of what to do next?
Well, I'll jump in here. It's kind of a unique scenario because my business is worst case scenario generated. And oftentimes we don't think about ourselves or our own business when we're trying to help others. The good news for Pinckney Perry is that about 2 years ago, we had streamlined our service model that allowed me to be more lean in terms of payroll. And so I didn't have to make a lot of adjustment related to operations. We more just had to shift conceptually, like I said earlier, from a sales model to very much a service model to get everything under control and see how the insurance marketplace, as well as the legislature, was going to treat, you know, this whole process as it impacts small business across the state and across the country. And so for me, the adjustment from an operational perspective was not that difficult because I had made some changes a couple of years ago that, for whatever reason, worked out during this time.
Great, great. And I love how you said you turned into the service model, because here you're kind of like a first responder. In this particular case, like she said, Kimberly's, I called my insurance agent, you know, so you end up being on the front lines, basically. Richard, you were on the front lines and just helping all the concerns and anxiety around what do I do? How do I protect myself? All the things that you have to preach to business owners prior to why you need insurance and business, why it's important, why when things happen, this is what you need us for. and
then something happens, and a lot of times you got to say, well, this is like one of the only things that could have happened that makes you have some caveats to direct access to your coverage. But listen, we've been able to help some people. Some people, especially in certain hospitality areas, you know, have really had to shut down, some restaurants and things of that nature. But hopefully there's some relief coming, both from the insurance industry as well as the legislature. Pressure from the legislature on some of the insurance carriers.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny, Richard, because I was actually one of those people that the insurance company could not help. And, you know, whenever the pandemic, you know, when it first hit, it was just really odd because we have a business where we work with clients across the country. And so it was almost like a domino effect. And so first, like the events in New York started getting canceled. And then we started seeing contracts in California. And then slowly but surely, every single backup plan we had started to fail because it's just like, oh no, the whole country is about to go on lockdown. And so for me, I actually had to go into the mindset of being a service provider, but in a different way. What ended up happening was lots of my freelancers, so we have over 5,000 freelancers in our database. And so you think about it, that's 5,000 people who depend on Black Girl Group to send them contracts. And so suddenly no one has opportunities. So if they don't have job opportunities, that means they can't feed their families. That means that they don't know how they're gonna pay their rent. They don't know how they're gonna cover their mortgages. And so literally I had freelancers calling me saying, hey, Stephanie, what can I do? How am I gonna survive? And honestly, I didn't have the answer because this was before any economic relief packages were even put in place. And so for me, I'm a business owner and then I'm also a mom. So here I am, I'm juggling homeschool. I got my daughter like asking me 10 questions at one time. And I also have these freelancers who are now looking to me almost as somewhat of a savior, like, how can you help me? What can I do? And so instead of me focusing on, okay, how can my business generate money? Within the first couple of months, I'm like, how can I make sure that my freelancers survive? Because I don't want to get a call that someone died because they committed suicide because they can't with the pressure anymore. And so I started trying to find, you know, churches who are giving out free food. I started finding places where, you know, folks could call in and get free mental health assistance. And so literally it just came into a situation where it's like, okay, fight or flight. Like I got to figure out how I can fight to make sure that my freelancers just survive to see another day. And then we'll worry about the money later because, you know, there's always going to be money in the world. We'll figure that out. But most importantly, we have to figure out how these women can survive right now just from a physical and realistic standpoint.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
wow.
powerful.
That's
Very
powerful.
powerful.
So Stephanie, you said you have 5,000 in your database. Are they in the local North Carolina area, or are they all over the United States?
No, they're all over the United States, which really is what put us in a more challenging position, because again, there were so many states that, you know, that shut down one at a time. And so let's say if we have freelancers in New York, a contract may be canceled in New York, but my business, I'm like, okay, we're good because California is still open. So there's still some hope that this event or this contract won't be canceled. And then it was like, oh, nope, that's canceled too. And so then it's like trying to figure out, how can I connect these freelancers to resources, to local churches, to shelters in the meantime, as these states slowly shut down. But it really got to a point where it was happening so fast, I couldn't keep up with the demand. And like, I called my mom and like, Mom, like, I know like we're all going through this pandemic. I know you're worried about us as your kids, but like, you've got to help me find some more resources, because like, I just don't know where to find all these things at in these different states. And so she helped me out a ton, but it was really hard because again, at the end of the day, like I felt like I was trying to save people's lives, and I didn't have all the answers because I didn't know what was going on either.
Right,
but
right.
At the end of the day, if they were coming to me, they felt like they didn't have anyone else to go to. So I had to do the best I could to make sure that I was helping them and being a resource to them.
We commend you for that, because there's a lot of people who would have just said, hey, I can't help, and you went beyond the extra mile to help. So, you know, kudos to you, because I know that was a tough, not only for you, your own survival, but also protecting those 5,000 people that you're responsible for. Yeah. Kimberly, what about you? When after the shift, what after your mother and the insurance guy, how did you move on from that?
Well, the third one was the lawyer, by the way. So, and the reason why the insurance is more important, because that's the money guy, protection and risk. The lawyer was because we do 3D printing. I'd been reading the newspapers at what was happening in Italy, and I have a lot of Italian friends on the engineering side. And they were telling me it was just as bad as you were hearing. And the reports out of Italy, where there were some folks who were 3D printing ventilator parts that they couldn't get anymore. And I'm like, well, I can do that because I can print anything, right? You know, like, okay, I can do anything. And, you know, then I started thinking, okay, yeah, I can do it, but am I going to get sued after the fact? So I just want to find out, you know, so I immediately called the lawyer and I'm like, hey, I'm going to violate trademark. I'm going to violate someone's IP, and I'm going to make something that's life-giving. So can you just tell me how bad it's going to be once I do this? Because I was already decided we were going to do it.
Okay.
And the lawyer said, well, hold on a minute. Let me call the Cleveland Clinic. And he's like, okay, there are special ways you can get approval to do certain things in a crisis situation. So he's like, hang loose. And so I spent about 3 days going through all the legal stuff and reaching out to everybody I could reach out to. And what ended up happening was we got a hold of a partner at the VA, the Veterans Health Administration here in Central Ohio. And she was a very enterprising person. Cannot sit still. This woman is incredible. And she said, hey, we need some face shields. Can you print those? And I said, absolutely, I can. And so I found a design with a company out of New York we're friends with. We're like, hey, I like your design. Can we test that? So we modified their design, met with some pulmonologists at the VHA here in Central Ohio. That got rolled up to the national level. And long story short, our design was the first 3D printed design in the nation to be approved by the National Institute of Health, exempt by the FDA. By the way, they exempted it. They said it's fine. And then approved by the Veterans Health Administration. And it was placed on a new website that they had just been developing. And we open sourced it. So we released all IP protection for the design. We allowed everybody to know how to make it. We uploaded the files, told them how to do it, and all of that. And then we began working with the local supply chain, because we were not going to China to source the plastic sheet, elastic, foam, everything. And we were able to get everything in Ohio.
Awesome.
The first round. The second round, we had to go to Michigan to get some stuff, but we were able to source everything in the United States, and we're very proud of that. And to follow up on what Stephanie said, we knew we were cranking out 700 of these ourselves a day. That wasn't going to be enough. So we started cranking up the local group, because a lot of folks have 3D printers, right? Schools, universities,
Right.
a lot R&D labs, they were all shuttered, like nobody was working. So we activated that network, and we're like, anybody who has a 3D printer, here's the design. Can you guys make us this? We'll send you the plastic to do it.
Okay.
So we organized a group of 175 schools and universities and companies, and we're like, here's the design, here's the plastic. You make it, you bring it to us, you send it to us. We'll decontaminate it, we'll put the shield on it, we'll finish it, and we'll send it out. So there were about 60,000 pieces that we delivered that way of PPE in the early days. Like this was in weeks, within weeks of it happening. So March, we had that design approved in 3 days from the VHA. You name me anything that happens in the federal government in 3 days.
No way.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Right. It was huge. And it was all about the connections, because we had, like, to your point, Richard, I was prepared for this. Like, I already had connections. It's hard to start fresh without that. We had already been doing a Toys for Tots campaign with the U.S. Marines. And we had this distributed manufacturing system already set up, where we would send plastic to people and they would send us the toys back, Toys for Tots. So we're like, well, let's just scale this up, and instead of toys, you're making a PPE, and it worked great.
Right.
And it was truly one of the most amazing things I've ever experienced in my career, of that heartfelt feeling of everybody coming together to do something. And no one cared about the money at the time, and we have since gone back and have made, given donations and, worked with everybody to get them some money. And also we hired 12 furloughed workers in restaurant and all that. We're like, we don't have money, we don't have people to assemble. That's not what we do here. So we lost 3 of our top people that do the 3D printing. 2 of them have wives who are nurses, and they had to quarantine. And one of them was in Florida on spring break right before when COVID hit, and he had to quarantine. So right as all this was happening, these are the 3 people I would have leaned on the most.
Right.
They were, I got to be out. So we had to hire 12 new people to come into our company and make this happen for us. So, and for the whole country. So it was incredible. That was just one side of our business. The other side was the plastic side. We make plastic. We ended up making 6 tons of filament, which is the ink for the 3D printer, in 3 weeks. We started production 24/7. I tell you, I was working 15-hour days. All of us were during that time. I'm sure y'all can relate. And I didn't get to be out. I didn't get that silent time to reflect necessarily, but that's okay. We're all called to do and give the skills that we can in something like this. And it was the most rewarding. As tired as I was, it was so rewarding. And I worked with the United Way of Central Ohio also to set up a fund for folks who might want to donate PPE to tribes. I have Native American tribes, nursing homes, schools, wherever people wanted to donate the PPE. We did that and donated, I don't even know how much right now. It was just a great ride.
That's amazing. That's amazing. In the midst of crisis, there are some people who do good.
Yeah.
And so, that was wonderful, Kimberly. Thank you for sharing that story with us, how quickly you adjusted and thought of what to do next. As business owners, sometimes we don't have time. We got that adrenaline going, and, you got to think fast on your feet. How can I help? And it has paid off. And so,
may I say, go ahead, Richard.
Sure.
Kimberly, have you been able to sustain that production and sales volume as much, if not more, than you did in the early days?
It has dropped off a little bit. The sale of our plastic filament, which is the ink, has dropped to our normal level, honestly. It's a little higher than normal because of the people who didn't know us now know us. So that was good. The PPE has dropped down because we were getting huge orders from governments. But it hasn't gone away because the second wave, we're now seeing schools and factories and I mean, it's some restaurants and bars who don't want to wear the mask, want to wear the shield. I brought one to show you.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, a foam. So this is this foam is from Paynesville, Ohio. So this is from Michigan. And the visor was made here. And I've switched the visor from 3D printed to injection molded. We worked with a local automotive company who had slowed down production. And they used their injection molding machine to make this so we could make it better and faster and cheaper. We could cut $3 off the price of this, and we could produce thousands a day instead of hundreds. So the power of the network, right?
Right.
So the demand has shifted. It's been harder though. You can't just go to the government and get one big check now. I have to go to walk-in dentist offices, and I'm not designed for that. I'm not a B2B. I'm not a B2C kind of business, and I'm a B2B business. And so that's been challenging, very challenging for us to figure out how am I going to move the next 100,000 of these face shields. I don't know how I'm going to do that. I'm still figuring that out. But I'd say we've built great networks, and just trying to tell the story has been huge. But I wanted to follow up on something that Miss Stephanie said. And to be honest, I have never felt more heart-centered in my business than I have during this time. People saying, God bless you, and not worrying about it. People saying, stay safe, be well, I hope you're okay, and meaning it.
Yeah, that's true.
Never before have I experienced that. And the other thing that was recognized, as I hope you all felt, was people saying, listen, I know you're not trying to sell me anything, you're trying to solve my problem. And that's how I went at it. It's like, I'm not trying to sell you, my business, my services. I'm asking, do you have a need? And if you do, I have a product that might serve it. And it was a very different conversation than I think we'd ever had, because we were always in push mode. And this time it was more of a coming together to co-create a safe world. And that was a very different energy. So my faith and my heart is what got us to the point where we were able to pivot so fast, because we knew that you do this, somebody's going to need it. And those connections and those orders and the people just came to me. It was almost like a matter of faith, manifestation. I mean, it just happened. I wish I could say I was really smart and made it all happen, but I didn't. There was something greater than that driving it all. But I was aligned
to deep. You were smart too,
take advantage of it,
know? Very. Very.
And as you, obviously this conference is about leveling up and being successful as an MBE as well. And so how did you get support at this time? Obviously, you do businesses with a lot of companies and corporations. And as an MB, how did those conversations happen during this time? How did the connection, did you contact them? Did you guys have discussions with some of them? I know, Stephanie, you said you lost a lot of contracts. How did those conversations happen? Or was any support landed for you in terms of, from a diversity standpoint, were they able to assist?
Yeah, so for me, absolutely. a lot of the contracts that were canceled, you know, a lot of them have not circled back yet, but I do know that whenever things get back to normal, whatever normal looks like, I know we will be able to have those conversations again. But I would definitely say like the pandemic has also in many ways been a blessing because so many companies have shut down. They've had to lay off folks, but they still have work that needs to be done. And so the first place they come to is, like, okay, I need freelancers.
Freelancers.
And, you know, for years, you know, everyone has been talking about the future of work, and how, you know, a large percentage of the American population will still be freelancers. And even though I had a company that services freelancers, I also was curious about what the future of work would look like and how we were going to get to this place by 2020, because that's what the statistics said, is that by 2020, more than half of the workforce will be freelancers. And then whenever, you know, things kind of settled down a little bit, I'm just like, oh my gosh, the future of work is now here. Like I see exactly how we get
Future
here.
is now.
Right.
The future is now.
Now it's just been amazing because, you know, folks are reaching out and saying like, hey, I don't know how long these freelance contracts will last, but I have work that needs to be done. Can you connect me to people who need jobs? And of course I can, because there are lots of people who've been out of work, whether, you know, they were moonlighting as freelancers, but have full-time jobs. Now they have nothing at all. So now they're willing to be freelancers full-time in the meantime. Yes, I have plenty of opportunities. And so really that has helped me out a lot. You know, in addition to the fact that we are also dealing with racial tensions in America. And so that too has also helped my business as well, because now we have businesses who are interested in making more diverse hires. And again, because they're not in a position to hire full time, once again, it's like, okay, how can we hire more diverse freelancers? So it has really, you know, kind of shifted a bit. And I'm thankful for that, because again, going back to what Kimberly said, it's not anything that I figured out in my own strength. It's just like things suddenly shifted. And then it's like, oh my gosh, like now things are moving into a different, you know, moving in a different way for me in my business. And I was also very fortunate to receive a PPP loan. I was denied on the first round, and I was kind of devastated because I'm like, gosh, like I really can't help people or myself at this point. And then when the second round came around, I got an email said that I had gotten approved. I'm like, oh my gosh, like finally, like, you know, it wasn't a ton of money, but it was enough to be able to make me see another day. And so, you know, there have been just little things here and there, especially because it looks like we're going to be, you know, in this for a little while longer. It really does help that things are starting to shift, whether or not that shift has happened fast or not.
And you said a good point, and I think it'd be a great time to kind of shift to that. When you say the future of work, what do we got to look forward to after this? What do you guys anticipate, not only one for your business, but what do you think the future is going to happen in terms of, you know, where do we go from here, you know? And then what recommendations would you have for other business owners that is watching this about, you know, during this economic uncertain time, as things that they're stuck in their business right now, what would you recommend?
I'll say from my perspective, this particular moment was proof of the kind of work that IC3D does, because it put 3D printing, which I usually had to end up spending 15 minutes to more explaining to people what it was. It put it in the forefront of the media. It allowed people to understand the value of it and how 3D printing really saved lives during this. It was faster than any other industry could pivot. We pivoted. We pivoted in days. It took them a month. And there's no other industry that could do it. And so from that perspective, that's changed everything, because when you think about the nature of 3D printing or additive manufacturing, whatever you want to call it, it's local. It's always local, because you have that factory where it is. You can locate anywhere, so rural or urban. I have a very diverse workforce here. I have Asians, I have African Americans, I have Latinos. I have a very diverse workforce here, reflecting the greater community. I can train people at any age to do this. Also, the fact that we are trying to reshore a lot of manufacturing jobs. 3D printing is a way to do that, to begin bringing the raw materials and the machinery and equipment back to America and having it made here. So that's a huge shift in one sense. I think the other sense was that I hope to see more of is the small business, the shift towards smaller businesses, because we saw the backlash against the SBA when the monies that were meant for what's small businesses went to these, huge corporations, and America spoke pretty strongly against that. And I was glad to see that backlash, because I feel that we all know small businesses are the backbone of our society. So those are just a couple of shifts. I want to let Richard talk, and maybe there's something else that'll come up with his wise words.
We have, to me, it's more about going forward advocacy. We have always advocated for our clients. So I'm talking about since 1961, our agency has dealt with redlining, racial disparities regarding life insurance, and all kind of other stuff. But this pandemic led directly to the policy and the whole idea of a lot of businesses are dismissive about their commercial insurance. They get what they can get. They get the minimum, just enough to get the certificate of insurance, and they don't really pay attention. And so for me, it's a good thing, because now people need, I think, and want somebody to talk to, somebody that knows what they're talking about, somebody that pays attention to the kind of event cancellation insurance that you're getting for these events. Is it an all cause of loss event policy, or is it a general cause of loss event policy? If you're just going online and buying event cancellation insurance, you might not have gotten the thing you needed for this scenario. And so for us, as a consultative insurance professional, I like it, because now people are listening. People want advocacy, especially at a time when insurance carrier says, no, this isn't covered. See section B, paragraph 7, where it says blah, blah, blah. And so we have always fought hard for our insureds to say, okay, it does say that, but wait a minute. What about this scenario? What about this coverage? What can we do for them over here? Yeah. Is there a way to get this done? And so for me, the future is a little bit of advocacy and working more hand in hand with a potential insured or my existing clients about specifically what they're doing, where they're going, and what their future plans are.
Sure, for sure. Stephanie, what does the future look like for us?
Yeah, so I've had lots of conversations with different types of business owners, and from a workforce standpoint, I do, like I mentioned earlier, I do think that more of the workforce will move towards freelancers and independent contractors. I think that especially with small business owners and even larger corporations, since now we're starting to see that so many companies can now actually work from home, I think we're gonna see lots of people, vacate the spaces that they've been leasing because maybe they'll see like, hey, we're cutting costs now, so let's just keep people at home. Productivity is still up, so maybe we can move all jobs to being remote. I think there are obviously, still lots of jobs that can't be done remotely, but I do think that we are starting to see that more and more companies can actually go virtually. And I also think now, again, like what Kimberly said, I think now there is a greater emphasis on small business owners. For so many years, there's been so much uncertainty surrounding small businesses, right? Where folks say, well, I don't want to go into business for myself because what if, things don't work out? What if we have to close our doors? But now we're seeing major corporations dying, but we're still standing as small business owners. Now we have more people actually entertaining the idea of being small business owners, because for what feels like the first time in history, small business owners, that seems like the most sustainable job available right now.
Yes, she's amazing. You're singing my
Right.
song.
That's
I
just-
wanted to, yeah, I
I
wanted
just,
to
if I had a
fortify.
flag to just kind of fling around and say, absolutely. And you know what? It's been so liberating, even at working in the space. You can imagine the anxiety for us as business advisors, not being able to help small business in that first round of PPE. And since then, we're hosted by the Columbus Urban League. And so they were able to pull together technical assistance dollars from the city of Columbus and the county to assist these businesses to push through the process. And I know for us, we were able to recover, over $1 million in individuals of just getting that funding to get back on track. And without that technical support from the county and the city and other people coming together and not waiting to help these businesses. And since then has opened up other grant programs are starting and will be continued. And of course, with the state that the state of Ohio under the Minority Business Development Division, we were able to get, some grants get going. And so now I'm beginning to see some light from our, for our entrepreneurs in terms of what to do next. And so, so it has been like a little relief, like, whew, okay. So now, we're pushing like, okay, let's go now. Now, one thing I can say for the future, and I'm gonna let you guys end with the, what advice you would give to MBEs at this time. I see a lot in the mix of crisis. We got a lot of time to be at home and think, right? But everybody wants to start a business. I have had a probably work with, I don't know, maybe about 15 new clients within the last week and a half, wanting to start something new, and, in the midst of crisis, good things may happen in the midst of all this. So for those who may see crisis as an opportunity, I have seen a lot of businesses pivot to different strategies on how they can do, whether it's PPE manufacturing or, trying to do other things to help other small businesses during this time. And so, it's right. It's collectively coming together and figuring this thing out together, right?
Right.
So before we end with our last question, what advice would you give a business owner who's really struggling about what to do next, especially as it relates to, being a minority supplier, working with other the corporations that they work with on how to navigate through this time?
One of the things that we did was we reached out to our large corporate partners and our government partners. Which in some level, when you're working with the Department of Defense and automotive, which is most of our industries, those are huge impenetrable fortresses of corporate bureaucracy. And what we found was, because we were small and nimble, because we were closer to the people and closer to the ability to basically be agile, we found that those customers were checking in with us more than we could have the time to check in with them. They were saying, what can I do? How can I help you? Can I connect you to somebody? Hey, I've got a friend of a wife. My wife's friend works in a doctor's office. Call this person. And so I ended up having this huge sales team of my customers who were sitting at home not doing anything, because they wanted to be useful and they couldn't be. And so because they were furloughed or whatever. And so for me, it seems that the small business person always has the option to get into the fight, to get into the arena and do what they can do. And it's you're only limited by your imagination and your faith that it will work out.
Yeah.
Come on now.
That's right.
I love that. Anybody else? Richard, what advice would you give MBEs right now?
Well, I would say that it's been my experience that MBEs handle diversity and bad things very well. We've had to make so many adjustments in life and in business to get financing, to be creative and get things done in just starting our businesses. And so when crisis hits, in my opinion, most of the MBEs I know are good crisis managers because we've been in crisis, 50% of the time we've been in business anyway. So I'm a strong advocate of whiteboard sessions. And so I believe that, when times get rough, you've got to kind of clear your head, put a whiteboard session together, either individually or with your key team members, and figure out the go, no-go strategy. And as you work together, you'll develop a strategy. And then once you get some ideas flowing on what you want to do, don't be afraid to take action. You've got to do something. Don't just sit idly by and wait for this to clear or hope that the bank is going to let this slide. You've got to take action. And it may be, multiple actions that you put on your whiteboard that are the most important things, but you've got to do something. You got to take action. And then lastly, I would say, bring all of your commercial insurance needs to me. You can take that, you can cross that off your whiteboard.
Just call Richard, right?
Yeah, right. We got you.
I'm going to call Richard because, to tell you the truth, after this this pandemic kind of quieted down, now we're on second round. I have actually gone into a process to evaluate all of my insurance needs. Literally,
a lot of people
I just started that. But I think the last thing I wanted to say about the advice is communicate to your friends, communicate to everyone, your competitors even, because we're all equal in this moment. And communicate and say, this is what I'm doing. What are you doing? How are you? And honestly, that's been the best thing, because I'm getting ideas and things that I never thought from places I never thought they would come from. Just by being open and saying, I don't know what to do next, or here's what I'm doing. What do you think? Can you help?
Yeah.
So
I mean, the value of joint venture right now and strategic partnerships right now is huge. You never be surprised. You got to get, I know for us, it's getting business owners out of that isolation phase and asking for help. That's the big, huge word, help. And sometimes we are givers, you're in a business and you're in crisis, you're giving, but you have had to take that time to ask for help. And, I'm still running across other individuals who say, I just wasn't sure if I should apply for the PPE or idle long. I thought, I would be shut out. And I'm like, we still having this conversation? It's July.
Do something. Take action.
It took you 4 months. No, get on it. Yesterday.
That's exactly
and so that's one of those things, like you said, take action, get that whiteboard out, start to try to call strategic partners, get people to help, talk to your business advisors, your insurance agent, your attorney. It's time, your financial, your CPA, what can I do? And so that taking action is important. And Stephanie, I'll let you take it out with what advice you would give.
So I have two pieces of advice. One is keep going. And I know that sounds really cliche, but I've been so inspired hearing everybody's story today, because it made me think, what would have happened had we all just stopped and quit? Because we could have just, we're closing down our businesses. We're going to be at home like everyone else. We're not going to work. We could have easily done that. But I think had we not kept going, then we would have never known what was on the other side of the pivot. And the last piece of advice just echoes what you just said, is literally apply. Just apply for whatever is out there. And I know we often say, well, I don't know if I'm eligible, or I don't know if they're going to approve me or not. Let them make that decision. Apply anyway. And if they say no, apply for something else. But just make sure whatever you do, don't count yourself out of the game. Let them count you out.
Oh, thank you. So the goal of this session was really to listen to MBEs who have really leveled the playing field to, get beyond, these economic uncertain times and continue. I know it's going to continue to be, a push, for us to continue going. So I want to thank you guys for this session. What a wonderful, inspirational stories to hear from all of you. Hopefully somebody else will be inspired from what you shared today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes,
Thank you.